Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the Cashflow Chronicles Open Forum. No, this is not sponsored by Starbucks, I promise, just sometimes we all need coffee. An exciting edition here as we're actually talking about something that sometimes you don't necessarily think about from a cash flow standpoint. It's going to be human capital management. So I'm privileged to have a former colleague of mine, Shaundra Belle, who actually has a lot of experience with the actual space of human capital management. And we actually used to work together, so she has a great foundation of understanding cash flow, and her expertise really lies in this space as she has a number of years in this space. So Shaundra, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, great to be here. I'm really excited to chat about how we can maximize profitability in a business utilizing people. I've been in the space for around 10 years, took a brief break and went to Allianz, and a lot of my conversations continued to come back to having the right people, being able to hire the right people and gain employee retention, and that directly affecting cash flow and how much production a business could put up. So I'm really excited to be back in this space.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for joining. I think sometimes with cash flow, it's mainly just numbers based. So AR, AP, things like that. So I'm actually excited to talk about this because capital is a big part of just human capital, like you said. So it's truly what kind of financial impact do people have?
Yeah.
What's the one misconception you would say is tied to human capital and like HRIS?
Sure. I think the number one misconception that a lot of people in the finance world have is that HR is just a cost center. It's just going to be a line item loss at the end of the day on a budget line. Whereas if you look at it more like how can you invest in the people who are really creating the products, the materials, the code, whatever it may be that you're selling to make money in your business, those are the people that you really need to invest in so that you can increase your profitability over time. The more tools that you put in place for your HR team and the more that your managers are able to engage with their people, the more money you're going to make at the end of the day.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Would you say right now that's a big competitive advantage because talent's so hard to find?
Yes.
Especially in manufacturing, because many people I call, yes, I want to grow sales. I can't hire anyone to actually produce the product.
Yeah.
So you think that resonates quite a bit well?
Yes, I heavily focus on the manufacturing community in Michigan specifically, and that is the number one conversation that we're having every day is how do I get the right people? And then after I have them, how do I make sure that they stay here so that we have good employees who are invested in the business, showing up their best every single day, but they're also still here 6, 9, 12 months from now, especially in some of the more rural areas in manufacturing, not only in the steel industry, but especially in agriculture. Oftentimes you find that some of those individuals are just used to not maybe being valued very much at work. And so they don't have a lot of that old school mentality where they're really committed to the company that they're working for. So my job is to go in and see where those gaps are from a culture perspective in a business and help them curb that so that they can retain top talent.
That makes sense. It definitely does. Because I know I'm calling out my recruiting friends. There seems to be a big trend towards like contract work in this space because people can jump from a 6-month contract to another role.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming part of your role is how can we keep this talent that we train?
Yep.
And we can really avoid that turnover because sometimes there's commitment issues too. Would you say that's a challenge? It's like.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a challenge. In the past 20 years, there's been a big shift away from company loyalties, and a lot of that is because of culture at companies. It's traditionally been the expectation you show up, you do your job, you stay there for a very long time, and then you retire. And unfortunately, a lot of that has shifted, but what we're seeing, especially since the let out of COVID, is you have more people saying, okay, I want to be able to have a base to really come back to every single day and know that my bills are going to be taken care of. Unfortunately, the manufacturing space, the agriculture space, but more so just America in general, businesses have come away from investing in their people. And so when we go into a business and we say, okay, you've got a lot of contract work, why is that? Is it because you can't find people who want to accept the offers that you're giving them? Are you paying them too low? Do you need more analytics there? Or is it because they just don't understand that you're willing to invest in their future. And a lot of the conversations that I'm having, especially end of 2024, beginning of 2025, it's the latter. Employees want to feel during the interview process like this company is going to invest in their career and their future. They want to feel that through the onboarding process and the training process. But more so, they don't want to be there for 6 months and feel like they accepted a dead-end job.
Yeah, makes total sense as far as growth goes. I think one thing that resonates talking with my father, who worked for a company 35 years, he's like, why can't you stay with one company your whole career?
Yeah.
That's the goal, right? But at the same time, there's so many variables in the economy right now, and obviously I'm working to build something here. But at the same time, it's such a difficult environment right now in the economy because there's so many variables, and you invest in people. It's a mutual partnership. You want to build that.
I think it's a common misconception that companies can't retain top talent simply because of an hourly rate or what their salary that they're offering is throughout the year. When you treat your people right, it will take more than 20% over what they're making now to convince them to leave on average. And those aren't just Paycor statistics, those are statistics that you can Google, quite frankly, from a myriad of sources. But at the end of the day, if you can come forward and say, we're willing to invest in not only you now in your training and development here, but let's look at your career interests. Let's look at what you want to do long term. Where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Google, the leader they are, they actually have an exploratory process. You spend 6 months in some extra project that interests you. Let's say you're in sales, you want to dig into data engineering. You can spend an allocation of time in that world. So obviously they can afford that type of structure, but it's helpful because it is a good point relative to all the opportunities out there right now, and just people sometimes just want to explore this or explore that. That's also a cultural shift.
Yeah, I would say that having a platform, I know you mentioned HRIS earlier, a lot of people feel like an HRIS platform is just to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed at the end of the day, and then they can move on to the next thing. Whereas if you really go back into your platform and you utilize other parts of the system to help train and develop your employees, you can have more effective one-on-ones, you can get more effective feedback, but you can also assign them trainings in that platform. If you're really gonna maximize on your investment and say, okay, John really wants to get into frontline leadership, he's been on the line for 5 years, start assigning him small trainings, start giving him a small cohort of his peers that he can help lead with the manager. Start having more effective one-on-ones with 360 feedback so that he can tell his manager and his upline manager from there what he's really looking for. That's how you're gonna retain the people that you wanna grow with your company.
I can speak of many examples of the 360 feedback. It's always fun perspectives because it's anonymous. One of the things I did from early in my career, we had a red light, green light, yellow light responsibility. It's from a book where my manager left the room. As a team, we got together and we said, continue doing this, which is the green light. Yellow, it's okay. And red light is stop this. And then he comes back in. He loves that anonymous feedback, and we have face-to-face results, basically. So he's kind of surprised. He was really surprised, but he's like, thank you so much for this, because that is a critical tool. We have assumptions in how we are viewed. I know we recently talked about recording ourselves, and it's never easy doing this, but I hate hearing myself talk, but it's still just a way to get good feedback from that standpoint. So I think it's critical. What would you say, do you have an example of someone that truly optimizes a human capital management effectively, whether it be an example or some story that resonates from your career?
Yeah, I'll be honest, and this is not to plug my own company, but a big experience that I have had is with my current company. And a part of that is utilizing all aspects of the system. I think a lot of people buy an HRIS system, they have a lot of big dreams about what they want to do with it, and then they don't touch 75% of it. That's when it becomes a cost to the business instead of a really good investment to enhance the profitability of the business. So when I'm looking at it from an employee perspective, I can have anonymous feedback like you just mentioned. I can give my manager feedback on my one-on-one leading into it of what I want to talk about, where I have gaps, maybe what's something that I need to understand better, whatever that may look like. And he comes to that same conversation with his feedback for me. But what I really love about these systems is that it can tell me, you just mentioned the red light, green light, yellow light analogy. We have something very similar where I can type in my feedback for him and it'll tell me whether I'm coming across in a way that's maybe negative or maybe neutral or maybe really, really positive. And so I know how it's going to show up to him and vice versa. What I really like about this is we're not taking the amount of time that we need to take to really get to know our employees, especially when you're looking at blue collar work in the manufacturing space. They show up, maybe they touch base with their manager if something's not happening correctly, but that's really the only time that they get to have a one-on-one development conversation. Whereas if you have these consistent touch bases with your employees, you're digging into their career pathing, you get to assign them different LMS trainings that's going to make sense for what their aspirations are. They're going to feel like you're invested more into them. And 50% of employees, they don't leave because they got offered more money. They left because they didn't feel respected or they didn't have career growth at their current job.
Yeah, I think culture is such a critical element with anything. And just thinking of various examples I laughed about when you're saying these different perspectives. I mentor some kids in 10th grade, and we talked about communication today. And how often in the workplace, if you have a manager that sometimes there's not a mechanism that can give effective feedback.
Yeah.
It's like, hey boss, how am I doing on this? Do you have feedback for me?
Exactly.
You catch him off guard, and he's just like, oh no, I'm good. And then reviews come or anything like that. You're like, wait, what? But then there's a proper mechanism. You actually have a good process you can effectively manage. And one of my favorite books, Radical Candor, Lead with the Heart, and you have to basically lead with emotions and lead with numbers. So there's no surprises with what happens. It's a bit of a intense book, but it's a great methodology in my opinion.
Yeah, you brought up a great point, right? Like how do you relate the behaviors back to the numbers? And a lot of these conversations, how many times have you been in a one-on-one where you didn't know that thing is what you were being graded on that week? Or you get to your quarterly review and you say, wow, we didn't talk about that all quarter, but now it's a part of my review and how I'm being looked at as an employee. A lot of employees are feeling that way right now in the marketplace, no matter what industry you're in. And so being able to give them the tools to see what exactly is important to the company, more than just their pillars of success and what they stand for, but really get granular. Is it the widget work that I'm doing? Is it how I'm interacting with my employees? Is it a combination of both? And that's how you increase employee engagement. They want to know what you're looking for. They want to be good at their job. They want that raise. They want the next step in their career. And if they know what you're looking for, they can show up better every single day.
100%, because you show up to work, you just don't want to show up and collect a paycheck and have. Some people do, which is their perspective, and nothing wrong with that, but you want to contribute to the greater good, I assume, because you want to be a part of your company's results.
Yes, and engaged employees on average increase profitability of a business by up to 20%.
And that's the cash flow piece.
Yes, so when you're looking at why are my managers having hours worth of reviews every to every other week, well, look at that manager's production on their teams. It's probably above the managers not doing that touch-based work with their employees on the front line.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So I think the other part too, and from your experience, how many companies do not utilize this because they're so numbers-based?
Yeah.
Sometimes I got to get this deadline, then this deadline. They forget about the human side of it sometimes.
Sure.
Speaking of radical candor, I mean, it's such a hard balance.
Yeah, I have conversations literally every single day where I am quarterbacking for the HR team to the finance team, because HR is saying, here are all of the resources that we really need to be successful, and the finance team doesn't see the value in it because they feel like it's a loss leader, right? Yeah. Here's just a platform to get HR to sit down and say, okay, I've checked all the boxes. Really, if you're using it that way, you're not using 80% of the platform, right? Yep. There's over 400 payroll companies in the United States. You can throw a rock and hit somebody who can probably do your payroll, and they can probably do an okay job at it. That's one piece of it. Everybody wants to be compliant. But at the end of the day, if that's all you're really doing, you're not maximizing the system. I go in and have really effective conversations with CFOs about what do they need to see from an ROI perspective and where do they want to see that tool working for them in a year. Maybe we don't roll everything out the first day because, let's face it, large employers don't pivot that quickly. But if the HR team says we can effectively roll out strategy A, B, C, and then D by the end of the year, what do you want your production to look like? Let's set up a plan for success.
Yeah, and I think making an investment like a whole shift right away, that's a pretty big lift, of course.
Yes.
So a strategic rollout makes total sense. And similar approach I take, hey, I don't want you to invest this much money. Let's prove the system works. Let's touch base. Let's have a slow rollout just to make sure it complies appropriately. And of course, that ties into just the overall profitability with the business. Hey, if we're not making you money, I won't recommend it, point blank.
I talk to clients all the time who one product or another, one module or another doesn't make sense for their business. I'm never going to sell anybody something that's not going to give a positive financial impact to their business.
Exactly, the authentic conversations you have. It's like, hey, this is an option you can explore. A lot of people I know in your space utilize this. What are your thoughts? And then if they say, well, no, it's like, well, hey, just so you know, this is something I recommend, but we can revisit it in the future. So.
We can always add on later.
Exactly. It's a relationship. It's not just a transactional sale. I think that's what sometimes people have assumptions on. We're here to help, whether it be your profession, my profession. We have a pretty vast network. Whether you need any service, we more than likely have individuals we can help. So we're not just individual providers for what we do.
And I will say that's a really, really important point when you're picking your next HRIS system or the next human capital management company that any business wants to partner with. You really have to look at them like they're going to be a partner in your business. Because if you're just checking the box at the end of the day, then we are a commodity. And again, it's not worth the value to the finance side. But really digging into where are your people at. Turnover is a great example. I often tell people you want the analytics, but more so you want the predictive analytics. We need to reduce your turnover. It can cost upwards of $30,000 to replace a professional employee. So if you're thinking about bottom line and you have turnover of even a couple people a quarter, how much is that costing to have your recruiter sift through resumes? Not to mention just having those subscriptions in the first place, going through a whole process for that person to potentially not be the right fit.
Yeah, and part of this whole series is emphasizing companies to be proactive versus reactive. And it's just a conversation just to say, hey, here's ways we could approach this versus saying, hey, you want me to like buy something. It's a total opposite of how we work. It's truly, these are options for you to explore. Maybe it's not a fit right now, but it could be in the future. I think that's a good thing we both emphasize. Of course, if it's a fit, it's a fit. If it's a fit, it's a fit. But
I have clients who don't use applicant tracking at all because last time they turned over an employee was 5 years ago, and everybody has at least 15 years under their belt. They don't need something like that. When their business changes, we'll talk about it.
Exactly. So who would be the best individual that you would like to work with that's a best fit for you? You had mentioned a lot of time in the actual manufacturing sector, agriculture as well. Is there a certain area you like to focus your time in, certain individuals?
I have a softness in my heart for the manufacturing space and the agricultural space just because that's where my family comes from. That's kind of the system that I grew up in. But really anyone who has a couple hundred employees that is trying to figure out reducing their turnover in their employees and how can we be more profitable at the end of the day. On average, right now, HR leaders have been in their current position for less than 2 years coming out of COVID. So it's a really scary time in the HR space. Not only do you want to retain those individuals, but you want them to be able to provide the best experience possible for your new hires as well. If you're experiencing turnover on a regular basis, I would say it's definitely worth a conversation to see what is happening within the culture of your business that you can improve to reduce that turnover and increase your profitability.
Another anecdotal evidence to that, one of my really good friends in Atlanta, he has zero training. And he's a top salesperson, and he's like, I don't even know what I'm selling. I can't do the formal certification, but I don't even know the whole system, but it's working. So it's kind of funny. They say they're going to do training, and it's an industry-leading platform. He's like, I'm doing demos, but I'm not lying, but I'm not giving the full depth of the resource.
Yeah.
So that's really funny because sales organizations can be so sales heavy. It's like sell, sell, sell. But if you don't even understand the full depth of the service, sometimes
Yeah.
it's interesting. Or even anything from a training standpoint, a structured training.
Training is such a great start for an HRIS system because it's not just sales, right?
Yeah.
I've been in manufacturing facilities around dangerous equipment and I've asked people, did you even watch the whole video for the machine you're operating?
Just skip.
And the answer a lot of the times is, well, yeah, I mean, right? Which
Yeah.
is code for no, but I'm not going to tell you that. And so if you can really take the system and say, okay, how do we break these trainings down into bite-sized pieces? And then are there check marks and tests, quite frankly, along the way to prove that they went through the training and that they understand what's being told? Yes, you have required things like sexual harassment training is something you're going to get no matter where you work. But if I need to press this button for a certain amount of time for this to get to the next step, what is the why behind that? Do I even know what happens if I don't do that right? If you've got the right training set up, and we tell clients all the time, if you've got your recordings, let's pull them into the system and just give you a better way to track what your employees know or don't know, because that's also going to tell their manager what they need to rehash with them, right? If they need to come back in and say, okay, let's redo this training, if they need to get recertified, whatever that may be. We've all been on annual compliance trainings and just clicked the next button until we were done. That's
course.
one thing, but if you've got some heavy trainings in your business, how are you really making sure that your employees got through all of them?
Especially with high risk manufacturing, agriculture, from
Yep.
again, cash flow, but
Yeah.
workers' comp, someone gets hurt, highly critical injury. That's
Where's
another-
the paper trail?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having critical processes that take place, and of course, antitrust and all the different things, which of course we deal with at a certain perspective. So, yeah, I mean, this is really great information. So you had mentioned like the whole payroll world. There's so many companies that do this. I think everyone has a contact in that space. Where do you see the industry going in the next 5 years?
Great question.
AI is a buzzword as well, so.
AI is a buzzword. I've had a lot of AI conversations recently, so it's funny you bring that up. AI is interesting because it doesn't just know, it has to learn, right? And so AI, I think there's some fear in the HR space that AI is going to come in and just have all the answers and you're not going to really need an HR professional working at the business. That's simply not the case. Employees are always going to want to talk to a person rather than a bot, and employers don't want to answer HR questions all day. They just don't. They love having somebody to point to and saying, hey, go ask them, right? And so fortunately or unfortunately, HR kind of ends up being the catch-all bucket for all problems within a workplace, regardless of where you sit. But AI can help the HR professional be more effective and efficient with those conversations, or help the finance team make better decisions about, do we need more people? Does it make sense to expand the budget over here? Do we need more people to start working on projects over here while we expand third shift over there because of the projects that we have lined up? You can use AI in so many different parts of the system, from finding the right candidates who maybe aren't open to work on LinkedIn, who would be open to a conversation, to, hey, you were down in scheduling last week. Especially if you've got retail leaders you've got managers saying, hey, I need more hours this week. That's not enough for finance typically to give them more hours on the schedule. But if they can roll out and say, hey, we had 40 hours this week and 60 hours last week, and we did better and produced more and we're more profitable on this shift having 60 hours on the schedule, now can I ask for 60 hours?
Yeah.
Finance is going to be much more likely to say yes to that because they have the analytics to support it.
100% the spreadsheet management, because costs and like analytics are super critical for any business. I think given our past at Allianz Trade, well, your past and where I currently am, analytics is so critical. There needs to be numbers behind that. So
Yes.
yeah, that's so true. AI, in my opinion, it really is just a tool for optimization. It's never going to replace human touch and authentic conversation, because people just want to talk to people.
Yes.
It's just too much technology out there, in my opinion, too much automation, It's like, hey, put some inflection on your voice. Like you can really feel the emotions behind how someone's feeling.
Yeah.
As mentioned with the 10th graders I work with, we talked about this, like elevator pitches. I'm like, look somebody in the eye, have your body language. If you're confident, you're gonna come off that way. And the same idea, if you're, now someone else is more timid and in a bad mood, I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? You seem kind of in a rough.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that AI can't replace. And with HR, it's so critical.
Yes, for sure.
In breaking down restrictions and things like that. So.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, I had a target when I was actually at Allianz, and I very specifically asked them, are you looking to grow your business? And they said, as much as we would love to grow our business, we can't count on which employees are still going to be here in 6 months for
That's
an entire
crazy.
project. And this particular company took 9 months on average, sometimes 12, to build out the system that they were selling, right? Large industrial equipment systems. If they don't even know that they're going to have the same employee count by the end of that project, they can't afford to take on more than 2 projects at a time just from the manpower that they have. When I came here and I called them and I said, hey, what if we could help your business grow your employee count? They'll be more committed because you have the tools to help keep them committed to you, and they're going to feel like you care about them. They're going to stay with you longer. That was in July. We've had some great conversations since then. They're coming on board as a client this year.
And that's a great point. You're introducing something new and they have an obvious problem, which you truly don't know until you talk to them.
Correct.
AI can't predict that.
Exactly. Well, and especially if you've got such high turnover and you have no idea why, that's where you want your analytics to come into play. If I've got 3 teams on a floor in a manufacturing facility and John's team is overproducing everyone, I want to dig in and see what is he doing differently, not just on the floor. Is he having more effective conversations? Or is his team engaged in feedback? Are they completing their continuing education trainings timely and all the way through rather than just clicking in every 10 seconds? If yes, you can use that to roll out to your other managers and their teams.
And time savings, because reporting so critical.
Yes.
I don't have time to report all this, like pull reports and analyze.
Yes.
Plug it in the system, you're good to go. So really good conversation. I think, of course, this all ties back to the cash flow piece. Really, this has been a great conversation because sometimes I feel like it's a hidden topic.
Yeah.
Can be a cash drain or it could be an opportunity from a cash flow standpoint if you keep your employees. Do you have anything in closing from the conversation we had? I thought it was a pretty productive piece.
Sure. If again, from the beginning, if you're just looking at the invoice at the end of the day, you're missing the point on what it could really do for your business. Again, we talk about ROI all day. When I ask somebody for their budget, a part of that is what can you handle in a line item perspective, right? But the other part of it is I want by the end of your first year, you to be able to say, not only did this hit my budget on the cost side, but it enhanced the profitability of my business. I follow every client that I have for the lifetime that they're with me for that reason, because I want them to be able to utilize all of the tools, work within the system, and have it work for you, not just be something HR is begging for.
Yeah, I think that's super important. There needs to be a relationship long term where it makes sense long term versus just to be a drain on the cash flow.
Yeah.
100%. I think that's all we have today. So you'll see Shaundra's linked on the LinkedIn post here today. And feel free to reach out to her, reach out to me if we can be of value to you here on the topic of HR, human capital management, and of course, cash flow. So thank you, everyone. Again, Starbucks does not sponsor this particular video. So I appreciate your time.